be here with you all. My name is Angela Dominguez, and it's very nice to meet you. I thought I would start first with a few things about me. First of all, I live in Richmond, Virginia, so I am your neighbor. I love the outdoors. I love going hiking and camping, but I'm also an author and illustrator for about 12 years. I started as an illustrator first, and then I became an author, and I've done over 30 books. And here are some of them. So I started first with picture books and started writing some of them too. And then I'm going to be talking about the Stella Diaz books today, which are the longest books I've ever written. Really, where a lot of my inspiration comes from is a long time ago, which is my childhood. So it all began that I was born in Mexico. I was born in Mexico City, and do you see the little black dot in the middle of the country? Yeah, that is Mexico City, which is the capital of Mexico. But I didn't live there very long. When I was less than 2 years old, I moved to the United States, and this is my first passport picture. Now, I moved to the United States with my mom, my dad, and my brother. The rest of my family stayed in Mexico, and I loved visiting. I loved when they came to visit. Now, when I was about your age, I was very shy because I got my English and my Spanish jumbled up together, and I had to take speech classes until 3rd grade, which meant that meeting new kids or doing a presentation was really scary whenever I had to talk out loud in front of people. But I really got into drawing. How many of you like to draw? Now, in elementary school, I started writing for school, but I also would make my own books on the weekend. Have any of you ever made your own books? That's awesome. So the way I would do it is I would write my story down, I would draw pictures, staple together, and then those were some of my very first books. But through the rest of my school, I did really well. I got good grades, and I also continued to take every art class that I could, and I was able to get a scholarship to study art. So people often want to know how to learn how to do illustrations for books. Well, I went to college. I went to art college. And then, when I'm not visiting schools, I'm usually in my studio. But now I'm going to talk a little bit about the longest books that I've ever written, the Stella Diaz series. So, the funny thing about Stella is that I actually imagined doing this as a picture book. I was just going to do it as a short little book. And I thought it'd be about a girl who loves sea creatures, but her whole day is ruined when she goes to the aquarium and there's a boy from school that she's too afraid to talk to. And then I thought I would name her Stella because there's a famous movie or play called A Streetcar Named Desire, and in the play, the character screams, "Stella!" when he's so frustrated and he wants to talk to her. And I thought maybe that could happen in the picture book. And I set it in the Shed Aquarium because it's the prettiest aquarium I have ever been to. But I worked on it as a picture book. Thought it was going to get published, and then it got rejected. Do you know what that word means? Let's see. Do you know? Or do you want to say what it is? Yeah. Let's see, does somebody else do you want to say? You, yeah, in the braids? Right, like they said, no, thank you. They said, we're not going to do this. It was just kind of a hard thing because whenever you do something, you want to feel like it works out. But after it got rejected, I started illustrating these books by Monica Brown called Lola Levine. And it reminded me of those Ramona books. And I started thinking, what if I write this book as a novel? And this is where I got the idea. So I didn't know really where to begin. So I started researching facts on marine animals in the library. Like I found out really cool facts. Like, did you know that a jellyfish doesn't have a brain? You guys are so smart. I didn't know that. And when I read that, I thought, I have to put this in the book. And then there's this thing people usually say, like a phrase, they say, write what you know. So what I did when I had thought of this book that would have a mom and a brother, I decided just to base them off of my own mom and brother. And then I looked at my old class pictures, and I thought about kids I went to school with, and I thought maybe those could be some of the characters in my book. So you all are surrounded by people that could inspire you to write your next story. And I looked at old yearbooks, and I thought of old teachers and librarians. And I thought about my speech classes, and I thought there's a lot of kids who might experience that and might want to see that in a book, or if they haven't experienced it, maybe they would see what it's like. And then I thought, usually every main character has a sidekick or a best friend, right? So I thought I would put in my own best friend, Mimi. But Mimi hated her name growing up. She tried to convince me to call her Jenny for a while. I didn't. But guess what I named the best friend in the book? Jenny, that's right. So the first book comes out in 2018, and all of a sudden I see classrooms sharing the book. I see that it's part of this global read out loud, which meant a lot of classrooms across the world were reading it together. And I even won an award for it. I won the Sid Fleischman Award for Humor, and I had to give a big speech. So because of that, I decided to write a second book. So I thought Stella would try making a project for herself, and she would continue learning to love about sea creatures because she loves them so much in the first book. And then I started reading this book, this article about plastics in the ocean and seeing that it's kind of a problem. And that some animals, like sea turtles, accidentally eat plastic bags thinking that they're jellyfish. And I'm just thinking, if Stella were to read that, she would try to want to fix that. I also thought of my times that I went to Mexico with my family and we enjoyed going to the ocean. I thought about Greta Thunberg and just how it's so cool to see a young girl being so passionate and an activist for something. And then I thought about my own aunt who speaks up for women's rights. So I took all of those ideas together and started thinking about how to write the story. So I start by writing on notebook, then I do little post-it notes, and then I figure out every chapter. I even do little drawings. So these are little rough drawings, and I was thinking about, okay, I have to have those sea turtles in there. I have to have her going to Mexico, and then her experiencing the oceans for the very first time. And so these are the two images that stuck into my mind. How to cut back on plastics and just being a little bit more mindful, and then thinking about how Stella loves the ocean and how she wants to protect it. I'm going to share a few easy steps on how to actually do your books. So first, brainstorming. Do you all know that word? Yeah? Does somebody want to tell me what brainstorming is? Let's see. What about you? That's right. You think of ideas, and it gives you things to write. So a big way that I do that is by asking questions like who's in the story or where does it take place. But I also can make lists sometimes with words related to what I'm trying to write. That's called word association. So if I were to say the word oceans, what are a few things that come to mind? You can raise your hand. Let's see. What do you think? Sea turtles. What about you? Ocean animals. What about you? Fish, that's right. What about you? Dolphins, that's a good one. What about you in the stripes? Yeah. Water, yeah, there's a lot of it, right? What about you? Coral, that's right. So all of those things and many more things are related to the ocean, and I would make lists and lists and lists, and that would give me ideas of things to write about. Then I work on the characters. And the characters are the heart of a story. So a character can be a person, right? But it could be an animal, and it could be an object. Like, what are some different animals or objects that a character could be? What do you think?
Maybe they could be like Dr. Seuss, people like ants.
So like someone inspired by Dr. Seuss. Okay, let's see. What about you?
Maybe like a tree.
A tree, right? That's a great idea. What about you in the pigtails? A fish, that's right. What about you in the red?
A squirrel.
A squirrel. I love squirrels. That'd be a great character. Let's see. What about you? A hamster. But it could be like a robot, right? It could be a stapler. It could be a toaster, whatever you want it to be. The most important thing is that you think it's interesting. So, for instance, with Stella, I used myself. For Sing Don't Cry, I used my grandfather. But sometimes I just make up a funny animal, like a bird, and I put a scarf on it because I like putting clothes on animals. Then after you think of your characters and you brainstorm, you got to do your research. And can you guess my favorite place to do research?
Library.
The library. Raise your hand if you like the library. Raise both arms if you love the library. So many of you. That's wonderful to see. Now you actually have to write the story, which is like the hardest part, but it's also the funnest part. So I start with a great sentence and then a great ending. But you can't forget the middle, right? Because that's like the yummy part. That's the part where problems happen and they have to get solved. That's where all the action is. And so you just think of what is a problem your character could have and how could you solve it. And then I find inspiration. Can you think of some places where you could find inspiration? Let's see.
The Grand Canyon.
The Grand Canyon, that's right. Where do you think? Your mom or dad? That's right. You could get inspiration from your mom or dad. What about you in the black? Yeah. Under a tree? Yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do two more. What about you in the gray? Yeah.
Like your neighborhood.
Your neighborhood? What about you in the black? Yeah.
The sea.
The sea? Oh, no, but I was saying you in the white shirt. Yeah.
The museum.
The what? The museum, that's right. So these are a couple of places where I have gotten inspiration. The outdoors, nature, bookstore, a museum, a gallery. For Stella, I went snorkeling to see how it'd be to be in the ocean. Now these are my final tips. Whether you want to be an author, illustrator, this is just to help you if you want to be creative. So the first thing is to read, because that teaches you how to come up with good ideas, sentences. Then if you are writing a story, you can always borrow somebody else's idea. So the true story of Three Little Pigs is Three Little Pigs, right? Can you guess what Maria Had a Little Llama is? That's right. Sing Don't Cry, did you know that's based off an old song? So it's a song that's called Canta No Llores, or that's one of the main line in there, and that means sing don't cry. And I borrowed some of the lyrics to write my story. Then work at it. You can get books from the library, you can go to workshops, they can all help you get better at writing and drawing. And then, how many of you have a sketchbook or a journal? That's awesome. So I always walk around with this little pencil bag here, and inside I have this little journal, and I write down little ideas in here, and I carry it with me everywhere, so that way a good idea doesn't go away. And inside of here I actually have different chapter ideas for Stella 3, which I'm working on right now. And then finally, know that you are storytellers in your own way. So whether you want to do a poem, you want to do a dance, you want to write a song, you want to do a graphic novel, you want to draw a picture, in any way you can tell your story and it's worth telling.